I said, if you didn't purchase it, then maybe Bobby Shelby did. There was never an answer. So anyway, I just went on thinking that it was possibly Bobby Shelby. Well, anyway, I said, how long have you known about this? And he said, I've known about it for several months. And I said, well, why didn't you say something to me? I said, if it was all over this dog kennel, if you'd have told me, I would have paid the city back for the dog kennel. Informant for the sheriff's department, but yet he's coming to you and asking you if you want to buy city property back. I said, to me, that sounds kind of suspicious. And Curtis said, well, I'll give you the sheriff's department's number and you contact them. So the thing about the dog kennel, after the police chief was dismissed, our police officer went out and picked up some of the equipment and stuff. Okay? He got what he thought belonged to the city. Well, the police chief called me and informed me that there was still other property out there that belonged to the city of Grand Junction, and asked me if I would pass that information on to Curtis, which I did. I told Curtis, I said, Curtis, there's supposed to be other city property out there. Pat wants you to come pick it up. And I went on about my business. And I thought that was the end of it, but apparently it wasn't. Anyway, this whole deal, you know, some other things in our conversation that night came out that if we'd have been aware of it, if it had been brought before the board, things could have been handled differently. And we would never be in this situation that we're in right now. It was brought to my attention that the mayor was aware that the police chief had a drinking problem. He was on duty drinking, and he was taking prescription medication. And I said, Curtis, you should have brought it to the board. We could have dealt with it. We could have either terminated him or offered to send him to drug rehab. Curtis told me, said, well, I thought I had it under control. But apparently that was not the way it was. He didn't bring it to the board and let us sort it out, give the police chief a chance. We could have told him, said, look, you're either terminated because you've been drinking on the job, which we could have done, or we could have given him the option to go to rehab and get dried out, and then we could have monitored his activities after that. But that didn't happen. So what happened was, then, you know, he was apprehended down in Mississippi in a police vehicle, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Well, he was dismissed without us knowing about this, which, if we'd have known, the outcome may have been different. But see, this just keeps adding fuel to the fire. Well, we have other employees that have misused city equipment, city property, and I brought that to the mayor's attention and to our vice mayor. And this involves our former fire chief. The board agreed to let him have a vehicle to drive because he didn't have a vehicle in order to be able to make it to the fire calls. Okay? With that being said, this particular individual had a part-time job. He started using the city vehicle to drive back and forth to this job. This job happened to be in Mississippi. He worked Fridays and Saturdays. So that was a trip down there, a trip back, 2 days, 4 trips. with an average of 40 miles a weekend, okay? And this has gone on for several years. Well, I brought it to the mayor and the vice mayor's attention, and they told me that they didn't really have a problem with that because he needed the vehicle because he was a emergency fire chief and emergency responder or whatever. Well, anyway, just to give you an example, Burton Sugar Farm is open from April through October. That's 7 months. That's 28 weeks, 28 weekends. Okay? You figured 40 miles per weekend, and this equals to 1,120 miles that this person was putting on a city vehicle. And being generous, which I am, if you use 18 miles per gallon, this works out to 62 gallons of fuel, and you figure this is $3 a gallon, being in the medium range. That equal to $187 a year that this person was using this to go to his part-time job, which was not right. And I argued with the mayor and the vice mayor about this, and they kept telling me they didn't have a problem. Well, I went by the sugar farm, I took pictures of the vehicle sitting there, and I brought them and I showed them to them. And I told them, I said, look, I said, this is not right. I said, something needs to be done. I said, this needs to stop. I said, we've already had a problem with one police officer with a vehicle outside the city in a different state. I said, we have an emergency vehicle. I said, if he gets a call and he leaves Mississippi where he's working and heads to the emergency, he has a accident. I said, this is a terrible liability on the city of Grand Junction. And I said, something needs to be done. I said, or I will take the pictures that I have and present them to the board. And I was told, well, okay, you go talk to her. So I did. I went over to his house, called him outside, laid the pictures out, told him. I said, this has to stop. And it did. He went out and he bought himself a vehicle. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because the liability that was presented here was the same kind of liability that was presented with the police chief being down in Mississippi intoxicated. It was an unprecedented burden on the city if we had a situation where he was involved in an accident. But we were fortunate in both cases. But this kind of stuff has never been brought to the board's attention and been brought up for discussion. It's just...
Mayor, my name has been mentioned here. Let's do a little talking about this.
Okay, we can talk. But have I said anything that was not true?
The vehicle was purchased to replace an old city vehicle for a first responder. Now, personally, I did not know he was driving it down there.
I showed you the pictures.
Yeah, I did not know it prior to that. Prior to that, once it was made aware of that, it was stopped. We asked you to go talk to him, and I talked to him. He didn't know I talked to him. And it was stopped. He quit driving it. I was not aware of that it was even being taken down there. But he was given the vehicle to operate and use as a first responder in addition to being the fire chief, the man that makes the calls and has a defibrillator, and if you're having a heart attack, tries to save your life.
Okay.
That's what the vehicle was purchased for.
Right.
And this really doesn't have a thing to do with what we're here for tonight, Mayor.
Yes, it does, because it's leading up to.
Well, you know, we'll go ahead and come to a conclusion so everybody else will be afforded an opportunity to speak also. Because then I'm gonna offer some rebuttal, because there's been several things that have been said about me. And under advice of legal counsel, I'm not gonna comment on certain things, but there's also some privacy that was involved. When you were talking about former Chief Ryan, about some things that I knew and did not know and all. This may be coming up later, therefore I have been advised not to comment one way or another, but if you don't mind, go ahead and let's come to a conclusion.
Okay. It's just like the deal with, I don't know if you guys are aware that all the weapons have been removed from the police department and taken to the sheriff's department. I mean, I would have thought that that would have been something that would have been discussed. I mean, there's no reason why that should have happened. I mean,
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. You're going into an area right now that it is the mayor's responsibility. And I also talked to our legal counsel before I did it. And if I had to do it again, I would do it again. Because the reason everything was taken out of the evidence locker, approximately a year ago, we had a break-in in the police department. The evidence locker was broken into. All that evidence was taken out of it. A couple of weeks ago, a door was found open at approximately 4:15 in the morning. We have an evidence locker there. All of the evidence that was in that locker pertains to cases that Lieutenant Powers has had for the past year. With the correspondence that I had received from the Attorney General to legal counsel to us, I had all of that evidence along with our firearms. And there was actually six firearms. 5 of them belonged to the Grand Junction Police Department. One was a rifle that had been confiscated years ago. The other firearms in there pertain to the cases. Since these cases are being reviewed by the Hardeman County Sheriff's Department, all of the evidence in that locker has been turned over to the Hardeman County Sheriff's Department and is locked up. The vice mayor was with me, the chief deputy, and the 2 investigators. They cataloged everything that was in that. As a matter of fact, it matched Lieutenant Powers' log. Pictures were taken and all. I'm trying to look out what's in the best interest of this town. Now, once before, evidence that Chief Ryan had in that locker was taken. We don't know what happened to it. I did not want to see that again. Not too many people try to break into jail to try to break out. So I thought that was the safest place. So yes, I had it moved, and as mayor, I can do that. No, that's not something that I took up before the board. Let me back up again on this dog kennel. This goes way back, and yes, this was between Chief Ryan and myself. I thought it was a good idea at the time. If the dog that was being donated to the city of Grand Junction had worked out, it would have been an asset to the police department. The dog did not work out. Chief Ryan and I were still looking for a K-9 unit because he had the experience in handling K-9s. He did have an individual who happened to be Benny Jennings, who trains and handles K-9s. He was going to be utilized to train the dog that Grand Junction was going to use, that was going to be kept by Chief Ryan, and the dog kennel was purchased out of the drug fund. Now, you being former mayor, you know this. The drug fund is a sub-fund of the general fund. The chief makes a recommendation to the mayor that if there's an expenditure for the department and the mayor signs the check and the CMFO, the financial officer, signs it, but the recommendation comes from the chief. Now, and depending upon the amount of money, yes, I carry it before the board. That last police car that we bought out of it and the ones before, yes. On this, it was $400 and something, but it was nothing secretive about it. But we also didn't want to tell everybody that we are going to have another K-9 unit. But yes, this was agreed to upon me and Chief Ryan. Now, and you're right, when that dog did not work out, we still felt as though there was going to be a need because more narcotics were being seized